So I'd like to introduce, without further ado, another friend of mine from the Costa del Sol. This is Anne McCloskey. So I've had an Abby McCloskey, and now I have an Anne McCloskey on the show. Um, Anne is a very lucky find for me when I first moved to Spain. Um, Not quite sure how I got in touch with you, but Anne is a therapist like myself along the Costa del Sol in Spain. And we initially set up with another therapist and had some peer supervision together, but it turned into more boozy lunches, really. And Anna and I have just become really good friends and a real good emotional support with clients, but also as friends. And she's become a very big part of mine and my dog's life. My dog Ava adores her and Jonathan, so yeah, they're her foster parents. Anyway, welcome to the show, Anne.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, thank you for helping me out, and we've got a really interesting subject to talk about today, which we'll come back into in a minute. But maybe you could start by telling us about yourselves, whatever comes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, my name's Anne McCloskey. I am 51, moved to the Costa del Sol about 4 years ago. I guess from the accent, you'll probably know I'm from Northern Ireland. So I'm 51 and I lived in Northern Ireland until I was 18. And then I went away to university in England and was away from home until I was about 40. Went back for 6, 7 years and then moved out to Spain. So I guess when I left home, I went to university, and my first job, my first career was in the food industry. Very different from what I'm doing now. And I spent over 20 years doing that job and became a sales director for the whole of Europe for the business. And then the opportunity came along to take redundancy, which I did, and moved back to Ireland because my parents were getting older. So took that opportunity, moved back, and then I thought, what do I want to do now? And I'd always enjoyed, I guess, getting the most out of people, making sure that, people, that's what got me up in the morning. It wasn't anything else. It was kind of like I loved working with people. So I kind of just had to think about what I could do. And then I went back and studied to be a counsellor. And for the last 6, 7 years, I've been a counsellor and psychotherapist, working in primary schools, or not primary schools, secondary schools, GP practice, and then I set up on the Costa del Sol 4 years ago in private practice.
Mhm.
So that's just a little bit of introduction, I guess.
And what made you decide to come to Spain?
Blue skies. Ireland is an absolutely gorgeous country, very, very green, but we don't get a lot of blue skies. So, yeah, absolutely, the weather was the number one thing. And I just love Spain. I love the grit of Spain. Yeah. So, yeah, the weather, I would say, more than anything
Mm.
else.
It seems like it's a similar journey as well because we both moved over here at the same time,
Hmm.
set up a private practice here, and there's certainly not a shortage of work for us here, is there,
No, there
amongst the
definitely isn't.
expat community?
Yeah. I only work a few days a week, and if you wanted to work more, I'm sure if you put yourself out there, you could definitely. There's a lot of work, but it's absolutely lovely. I just absolutely love my work. I love the interaction with people, and working with youngsters as well as adults. So yeah, absolutely, it's great. I love it.
Well, for us, it's finding that work-life balance because we've made our life work for ourselves and turned it around, and we want to enjoy our experience here too. So
Absolutely,
it's finding the balance of
absolutely.
that. And it sounds like you've made it work. Also, you're in a very different environment to me, aren't you? You're sort of away from the coast, slightly up, and so you have a different environment to work from, whereas I'm in Marbella and it's maybe just different clientele, but
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I live in the mountains. I've always, I guess I've always been a country girl, rather than a big city girl, apart from the time that I spent in London. But yes, I live up in the mountains, which is absolutely gorgeous, in a really traditional Spanish, town. Quite big, 25,000 people still. But yeah, word of mouth, it's absolutely unreal how many clients I get referred just from somebody that's already been, and they're like, oh my gosh, and then somebody else, and children, as well. So yeah, it is very different, but the support that we have with one another is invaluable.
Yes,
We
it really
obviously
is.
have our supervision and everything else that we need to have, for our practice, but just having one another is just, it's fantastic. It's great.
Mm.
It's
It
lovely.
is. You're a special find.
Oh, likewise.
Okay, so today's subject, although is a difficult subject to talk about, I think that it would be certainly very helpful for some of our listeners out there. The point of my podcast is to be able to talk about all relationships that we have, and the challenges and the learnings that we can get from them. And today you'd like to talk about your mum.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
sadly, your mum developed dementia and has now sadly passed.
Mhm.
And very bravely going to come on and share your experiences with
Yeah.
that. So over to you. Where
Mhm.
maybe tell us about your mum in life.
Absolutely.
In life.
Absolutely. I guess, as I said, I'm 51 and I'm the youngest of seven children. And there's 9 years between myself and the next sibling. So, when I was born, my mom was in her late 30s. And at that stage, like, nobody had children in their late 30s. It's, that's quite early for some people these days. But then it actually was quite late. So I had the absolutely amazing opportunity that I had a lot of time, with my mum. It was almost like being an only child because my siblings were so much older than me. So I had, from the day I was born, I just had the most amazing relationship with my mum. Don't get me wrong, there's times where we rubbed one another up the wrong way, but just she was just everything, everything to me. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had a part-time job, as a home help. So when I was at school, that's when she did that. So all the time she was at home. So a real stable person and caregiver in my life was always there. And I was a keen Irish dancer when I was younger. So my mom would have taken me to all my fascias and all my lessons and everything else. So very, very close relationship with my mom. My mom was a very quiet, lady. And I say lady because she was a real lady. She loved fashion, so she was always, her clothes, even right up until she died a year ago. Um, Her clothes, her just sense of dress was fantastic, and I would
I
like to
can
think
see where
that's
you
where I
get
get
that from
mine
now
from.
then.
Thank you very much. I wasn't fishing for that, but thank you. So she ran a very, I guess, tight house. Before I came along, money was pretty tight, and there was six other children. So she had a big job to do. My dad went out and earned the money, and she looked after the children and managed all the finances in the home. And then when I came along, as I said, we had a little bit more money then, not much, but a little bit more. So we didn't have to worry as much about money, but she managed all of that side of things. I think my dad must have done his job, came home and gave my mum the money, and she managed it all. Not just that, but she was very intelligent. But the fact that she had her children, she never had a career for herself. So before she had all her children, there was a chance that she would have been a school teacher. So she was very good. I can remember doing my times tables, methodically, every evening, and I loved it. And I still pride myself in some of the things that she, gave me, the opportunities that she gave me growing up. And then as I started getting older, I was a wee bit rebellious, maybe not that easy to be around. I think my mum was going through her menopause at the same time as I was a teenager. So it was quite interesting, but we always were still close. And then I left home at 18 and went to university. And every time I came back, the bond was just fantastic with my mum. I went everywhere with her. I went and did the shopping with her. I went out at weekends with her and my dad. And when I was away from home, it wasn't as easy as what it is now. I'm showing my age here. We didn't have mobiles, so there might be one phone call every week or every few days from halls of residence. But I phoned my mum as often as I could. And then when I stayed in England and had my career, I was still phoned her maybe twice a day. So always in contact with my mum. So then when I got the opportunity about the age of 40, I thought my parents are not getting any younger. And my mum and dad both had health problems. Nothing major, but my mum would have had autoimmune difficulties. So thyroid, Crohn's. She had a disorder of the eyes, which is called OCP, which is quite unusual, but it is to do with your autoimmune system, um, basically overacting. So 11 years ago, I took the opportunity of going back home. Um, so went back home, set myself up at home, and it was just fantastic because I then went back and studied to be a counselor psychotherapist part time. And I also got spent so much time with my mom and my dad. So that was fantastic to be able to be there in her later years. So she would have been late 70s at that stage. So still very able bodied, still driving, everything else. So then, after a few years of being at home, my mum started to fall a lot more regularly. You know, she would have had falls. And we thought at the start it was just her eyes. And then as things developed and we spoke to the doctors and the doctors kind of built up a picture, and we noticed a few things. You know, it's amazing how the brain remembers some things but doesn't remember others. I mean, for myself now, reflecting back on the dementia and the Alzheimer's. But I can remember it being suggested that my mum have the diagnostics, you know, go and have all the tests done, do all the questionnaires, whatever. So we went and did that. And I would have always been the one because my sisters and my brother were working during the days. And I had a lot more flexibility. So thankfully, I was able to take them to most of their appointments. So I took my mum to the appointments and the analysis and was there in the room. And it's really hard when they're asking questions and like, year were you born? How many children do you have? Just all the different questions that they asked. And if my mom kind of got stuck in an answer, it was, I know I couldn't answer, but I just wanted to rescue her. Um, but sitting and listening to that, so I kind of was building up a picture that, oh, you know, there's maybe something there from the questions that they were asking. So then I don't know how long it was. It wasn't as long as what it would be now. Maybe a couple of months down the line, we went to get the the results. So I can remember with all the things that happened to my mum and dad, I can remember always saying, "Do you know what? I'll be able to cope with any illness whatsoever apart from dementia or Alzheimer's." That was the one thing I thought, can deal with cancer, can deal with heart problems, could deal with anything else. So for me, that was like, oh gosh. And I guess the reason I felt that way, Deb, was because it's such an unknown. It's so different for everybody. And I didn't know that much about it. And, you know, even though I've lived through it now, there's still a lot that I don't know about it. So going to the appointment, I had organised to go with my mum and I tried to get some of my siblings to come with me. I guess I didn't let them know that I was scared and I would really appreciate if they came with me, but I just kind of asked, you know, can anybody else come with me? And they said, oh, well, you know, you're going, sure, it's okay. So nothing quite prepared me for that day. Taking my mum to her appointment and sitting there and them telling her, I'm sure a lot of listeners and people have been in a situation where you're sat in a room and a doctor or somebody tells you something, and it almost as if you dissociate and you kind of just take yourself somewhere else to safeguard yourself.
Overwhelming.
Absolutely. You deal with it the best way you can, and everybody does that. So when we went in and sat in the room, and I was just aware as well that I needed to look after my mum, because whatever was going to be said, my mum was the primary person that this was happening to. I was secondary in that room at that moment. So when they said, well, we just need to tell you that you do have uh, vascular dementia and Alzheimer's both. So it was just a shock. And
Can I just stop you there a minute? What is the
yeah, of
difference
course.
between vascular dementia and Alzheimer's?
Do you
Do you
know
know?
what? I couldn't tell you exactly what the difference is. In my limited knowledge is that vascular has an impact on your movement and all your muscles and all the vascular system. So for instance, my mum, that could have been what was happening with my mum when she had the falls. So, maybe like your brain forgets how to tell itself how to move your hand or how to, whatever it is. And as time went on with my mum, one of the things that I did notice was the incapacity to process more than one thing at a time. Because as human beings, we process so many things. We're only really conscious of 6 or 7 conscious things that we process at any one time. But if you imagine I'm sitting here now, and if anybody's listening or whatever, there's so many different thoughts going through that person's head that they're conscious of or not conscious of. But with my mum, as time went on, and now my dad actually has been diagnosed also in the last year since my mum's death.
Oh dear.
But you notice that their capacity to process is much less. So they can become very overwhelmed very quickly. So if there is a TV playing in the background, if there's people talking at the side, and then you're trying to get them to do something, that just doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's just too much going on and they can't process it all. So it's really making things simple. So I don't know if that helps define it, but yeah, so somebody would have to have a look online to give them a better idea, I guess, of what that means. I guess going back to then having that information and being told, I obviously asked questions. What does this mean? And how can we live with this? Do you have any information, that'll help my mum understand it, help the family understand it, and also my dad. So we got information.
What was your reaction in the moment when you heard that?
As if somebody had just literally hit me with something, just like a bus had hit me or something like that. It was just like, wow, this is real. This is real. This is happening. And I guess, I've been through different things in my life where you kind of think you have one thing, and it's not until somebody tells you that it makes it real. And I guess in our line of work, that's one thing that we would talk to people about. Some people really like having a diagnosis and other people don't like it. So it can work really advantageously for somebody, and for somebody else, it can actually not work the opposite way. So it's just important to understand with everybody. I guess for me, it was good, because then we knew what we were dealing with. There was an understanding of why things were happening, but then there was this whole area that we knew nothing about, this unknownness, and it is very different from one person to another. So even you could get as much information as you can from everywhere, but still there's things about the individual that's very different. So
was your mum aware of her diagnosis at the time? Did you see an awareness in her that she computed it?
I didn't see at that time, but they do ask the patient, if at the time where they get analysed, if we do find that you do have dementia or Alzheimer's, do you want to know? So they do give them autonomy, and they empower the patient at that stage. So they knew that my mum wanted to know. In some cases, people say, no, I don't want to know. So then their family find out. They allocate a person, to know, or maybe they don't want anyone to know. a doctor. So in that moment, my mum, but actually this is one of the things about my mum, and I think I don't know enough about this, but this is a strong belief, personal belief that I have, that my mum didn't show emotions very much. She kind of had learned the way of dealing with emotions was to internalize them, which we know is how people do it, and that's the only thing that's available to us, but it's not always the best thing for us longer term. So for me, my mum, I can never remember my mum crying. Um, so anything that happened to her, she literally internalized it. To me, that's why autoimmune and different things did happen to my mum.
Yeah, I agree.
So in that moment, I didn't really see much of a reaction. And obviously they spoke to my mum, not just me as well. So I took time when we came out of that room, and thankfully it wasn't a busy hospital or anything. It was in a separate unit that actually is used for older people and dementia specific. And it's in a really grassy, lovely area. It's a subsequent time since my mum has ended up in that hospital after being in the main hospital to rehabilitate. So it was a very nice space that we came out into. And my mum was a smoker. So I was just conscious that I wanted to sit with my mum for a little period of time to allow her to process whatever she needed to do at that stage. So when we came out of the diagnostics, we sat outside, and thankfully in Ireland, there was no rain that day. And it was July. That's what time of the year it was. So we sat outside, my mum had a cigarette, and I kind of just left the space for her and didn't really say very much. And then after a few moments, or minutes, I would have said, so, what do you think? What do you think? And at that stage, she didn't know, she just went, oh, I don't know, whatever. But I kind of wanted to sit with her and let her have the space to process, but also let her know that I was there, whatever this is, you've got support, and we're here. We'll find a way with this, like everything else that we do. Um, but not to fill the space too much with everything. It was her space. So that was that. And then my dad, when I went to any appointment with my mom, he was always on the phone. Are you out yet? Are you on your way home? Whatever. And when we were in the car, because obviously it took a little bit longer than what we thought, because we made sure and give my mum the space afterwards, we got a phone call from him. Well, how did it go? And I said, oh, we're nearly home. So sure, I'll let my mum tell you when we get home. So I can remember coming in the house and, getting my mum in the house. And as soon as I walked through the door, it was still, how did it go? And I said, oh, my mum's just coming in now. I'll let her tell you. So she came in and he said to her, and I can remember it. And it was just heartbreaking for me at that time, hearing my mum tell my dad that they had diagnosed her with dementia and Alzheimer's. It was just something that I never wanted to hear. But it was her news, and I wanted her, to tell him, and in her own words. And then I don't think he asked very many questions, but there was like booklets and whatever else. And then I sent, because I have so many siblings and whatever else, I just thought, instead of starting to ring people up, I'll just send a message out to everyone and let them know what has happened, because everybody knew we had the appointment. So I sent a message out to everyone and just let them know what the diagnostic was, and that that they had given us booklets and whatever else, and they were all there. I'd left them on the kitchen table if anybody wanted to come and have a look at them. And then that there would be subsequent appointments made with our GP to give him our letter, and they would put my mum on medication and stuff like that. So that was us finding out, I guess.
That's
And
how do you remember seeing him take the news?
to give it a little bit of background, my mum and dad's relationship, they had never really been Like I've never seen physical love between them. But when they started getting older, when their physical bodies was kind of not as active as what they were before, the support and the love and the togetherness that I saw from my mum and dad as they got older was phenomenal. It was just such, I feel so humbled that I was able to see that. So actually the support, even from him ringing and saying, how did you get on? And, there was just a real, to give you an idea, I'd never ever in my life seen my dad do anything at home. And I can remember going in one day and my dad was hoovering. And I was like, oh my gosh, my dad's hoovering, because my mum wasn't able to hoover at that stage. So how did he react to it? I could see from him, it was just real sadness. I could see real sadness. And as it materialized, as time went on, a few years down the line, my dad was one of six, but one died when they were really young. He had one brother and three sisters, and two of the sisters that was left, he was in the middle. Two of the sisters that was left both developed dementia.
Mhm.
And they both died before my mum did. And I can remember taking my dad to see one of them was in a care home. And I can remember taking him, and I can remember he just didn't know what way to be. He couldn't get his head round how, he just couldn't understand how this worked. How could you not know me? So he was saying to his sister, and his sister, I could tell, didn't know him. She was like, oh, hello, and whatever. And he went, I'm Fonzie. Do you not know me? It's Fonzie. And I could see her looking at him, not knowing at all the vacantness. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things I'll talk about, the vacant look in the eye. And he just couldn't get. And then he tried to he would have corrected. So at the start, like as my mum's dementia kind of developed, my dad would have corrected, and not just my dad, we did it. Really, no, that's not, this is it, or that's the way, or it's Tuesday today, or it's
Hoping to
and
bring them back.
that's it. Hoping to bring them back and not meeting them with where they're at that time. And that's really difficult. That's really difficult. I guess going back to, so that was us being told, that was how did it land with us as a family. And I think, I don't know, I really didn't speak to the siblings that much about, everybody was processing it in their own way. Um, and how long ago was that? My mum's dead a year now, and I think she got diagnosed about maybe 5 years, 6 years before she died. Not too long. But then there was, from her diagnostics then, she didn't drive just before that for a year or so because of the eyes anyhow, thankfully, because that's one of the things with an uncle that had dementia also on my mum's side. When he first started developing it, he would just want to take the car. And I mean, how do you tell? How do you tell your dad that he can't take the car, that he can't drive anymore, or whatever? So in a way, we were blessed with that with my mum, and there was other things that I would say I was blessed with the dementia also, or we were, because when I left 4 years ago to come to Spain, shortly after I left, my mum had a stroke, which can, the likelihood of strokes happening can increase as a result of dementia and Alzheimer's, is my understanding. She had a stroke, and the stroke was quite bad, which left her that she couldn't walk. I mean, it was difficult enough for her to walk going up to that, but we had the most amazing caregivers. So we had the most amazing home helps that came in a few times a day. We had the most amazing dementia support who came in once a week to speak to my mum and dad, to spend time with them and play games and, whatever, sing or play music. We had an amazing OT, which got us every piece of equipment that we needed for my mum to care for her, because she was cared for at home the whole time. And my dad is still at home, and he's nearly 93 as well. So we had amazing caregivers around us that enabled us. So my mum had a really bad stroke, which put her off her feet, which in one way stopped her from trying to move. We knew where she was at all times. Now, obviously, then I give you that a complexity of her being frustrated with not being
Mm.
able to do things. And as well as that, she lost a lot of her ability to communicate verbally through that stroke. So that was very difficult. And that's one of the things over the time of the development of the dementia, is seeing the frustration, how frustrating it is for the person. Like I can remember my mom was, she just was such an independent person her whole life. And then it goes to then her being cared for. So she mothered everybody. I have seven in my family. I have 15 nieces and nephews, 30 something great nieces and nephews. She mothered everybody.
Mm.
So then suddenly to go from mothering everyone to having to be looked after and cared for yourself, I can imagine how frustrating that was. So
Yeah.
there was times where, but she was very, very gracious in it. There was times where, you could see her fists clench, where she was just so frustrated with things. And she was a great knitter. So she knit so many iron jumpers and everything. And I feel so privileged that I've got so many still. I actually have one that she knit before I was born, which is a long green, gorgeous green dress. And I still have that and I wear it. And that was before I was born. So it's nearly 55 years old, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a great knitter. So we tried to incorporate things that she could still do. Both her and my dad would have done puzzles as well. And my dad, up until probably 6 months ago, would have still done puzzles. So that would have kept their minds very active. So then the coordination with her hands wasn't great. So she couldn't knit anymore. And that was kind of like a frustration. And I do see that now with my dad, where he doesn't even try the things that he used to try because he's scared that he won't be able to do it.
Okay. Scared
And
to face himself.
that's it. Scared to do it, or, scared to realize that there's something else that he can't do that he used to be able to do. So with my mom then, as the dementia and Alzheimer's developed, then you had to do everything for her. I guess the eating, she was still able to feed herself, up to just, I would say, even just before she died. Maybe not, you would have had to break up her food or whatever, but she was able to, and she loved sweets, in particular after eights and matchmakers. So that was her little treat to herself, and she could still feed herself with that. But one of the fears I guess we had was, because it can happen, that the swallow, they forget how to swallow. Um, so there's lots of things that you just don't know how it's going to develop. But I guess once you get over the initial, and there was so many different stages and so many different losses. So like I lost bits of my mum for years before she died a year ago. So I lost her going out with me. I lost being able to communicate with her on the phone. But thankfully, we have a sister who still lives at home, who is just amazing, who just is the most amazing caregiver for my mum and dad, and has enabled them to be able to stay in their house. So even when I came to Spain, I was able to FaceTime every night, and obviously the conversation was one-sided. But I was still able to see my mom and communicate with her, and that was just invaluable. And even up until the day, and just I guess to take you up to um, where the day that she died, she wasn't sick beforehand. There had been a few times when she had had COVID that we were really scared that she would die from it because of her autoimmune as well. And also because she's not as active and not moving around, you have to be very careful that they don't take pneumonia and, things stick to the chest. So in a few instances we had, and thankfully she didn't have to go into the hospital. There's an amazing team, and I think it's everywhere throughout the UK, but certainly in Northern Ireland, that it's called the At Care Home Team, or the on-call care home team. And basically what it means is you ring your doctor and let your doctor know that your parent or whoever it is in a state that they need to go to be hospitalized, but actually they can bring everything to them. so they can give them a drip at home. They can give them lots of the care that they can get without having to go to the hospital.
Mhm.
So my mum had that a few times, and we thought we were going to lose her. I think the November before she died in the May, the November before we thought we were going to lose her, and within a few days after that, she picked up, and actually she's sitting, and that's one of the good things I guess around dementia. You have time to get used to losing the person. It's not just a sudden death. It's not just a shock.
Yeah.
So as much as dementia and Alzheimer's is a horrible, horrible thing to deal with, I thank it also for giving me the ability to actually get used to the loss over a period of time with my mum.
And that change in
Um,
relationship, that, you not only lost your friend and your mum, but then you were able to give her time and care, all that care she gave to you as you grew up. It was,
yeah,
I imagine
that's a
that was a
gift.
blessed time too.
That is a gift.
Mm.
That was an absolute gift. It wasn't always easy, and that was about my own stuff. You know, with me getting frustrated, was my hurt and my sadness that I'd lost that part of my mum. But once I worked through that, and obviously as a counsellor, I have my own counsellor as well that are invaluable, and friends like yourself, and a really good network of, friends, including you, to work with and talk to about these things, to process it. Once you process that, you're able to just be in that moment. You're very, very mindful with that person.
Mm.
And that's, I think, out of everything in my life, that's maybe the greatest gift that I will ever get, is actually being able to care for my mum and spend so much quality time with her. So, like, we weren't a very loving family. There was hugs because I was away. So when I came home from being away, I would have always hugged, and I have the most amazing photographs of my mum sitting as soon as she see me with her arms out, waiting for me to run to her, in the last few years. And knowing that, and knowing that they were getting older, I had the opportunity to take loads of photographs and loads of videos of that. And I would encourage anybody, take loads of photographs, loads of videos, because they are priceless. Um, so yeah, I think that it was also a gift. The dementia and Alzheimer's was also a gift to us, being able to look after and have so much physical touch, because obviously you're touching that person all the time when you're changing them, at the toilet, when you're washing them, when you're putting their clothes on, when you're putting their teeth in and out because she had false teeth, when you're brushing their hair. You're just, there's so much connection with them. It's on a whole different level. So it is. And I think that's the most humbling thing, and the biggest gift that I'll ever be given in life, is being able to actually look after my mum and dad. And I'm not the one that is this, sole caregiver. There's other sisters that do that, two sisters in particular.
So
But
you had a
that is a
connection with
great
her in a
opportunity.
different way. As you grew
Absolutely.
up, maybe you weren't as tactile, but you got that opportunity.
Yeah.
At what stage did Mum not recognise you?
Do you know, this is really interesting because she never forgot my name. So, and I don't think she forgot people's names. And it's very interesting because I wouldn't have tested her, because, like, if there is certain people that don't understand it, that say, "Do you know who I am?" Which is really understandable, and they almost take this great joy if somebody remembers their name. So maybe there was a bit of fear in my part that I never kind of put myself in the spot of her remembering my name. Or if we would have been in company, I would introduce somebody to her, or I would always introduce somebody to my dad, or whatever it is, if I remember their name, as well. But yeah, sorry, what did you ask? I went on a tangent.
Was there a time that Mum forgot, just didn't
Yes.
recognise you?
And so the only time that I can remember is probably a few weeks. It was the last time I saw her before she died, because of living in Spain, but I still went back every month. And I was back 2 weeks before she died. And that time, she had something wrong with her toe, and I was actually dressing her toe and doing different things with her toe. And she just turned around and she went, "I don't even know who you are. Or, who are you?" like really like, who are you? And you couldn't always understand what she said, but this kind of came out really plain. It was almost like, who are you? Like,
Mm.
as if like I was a nurse or something. And I said, it's Anne. I'm just, your toes sore and I'm just dressing it, whatever else. And that was the first time I kind of can remember going, oh my gosh, she didn't know me. But there's there's a deeper connection when you're with somebody that's got dementia and Alzheimer's. It's not, and you know this because of what we do for our living as well. We connect on so many different levels. It's not just through the voice, although that's what we use a lot. But with the dementia, my mum certainly, they can feel all the emotions that's going on around them. So if she maybe saw somebody or whatever, she could, from what I seen and what I could connect with, you could see the reaction in her face that she connected to how that person made her feel in the past, or, the warmth that maybe came across. And the very interesting thing as well, and we've seen this with my dad, and I know it's happened with other people as well, is as her dementia started, the connection that she had with the youngest member of our family, who was an infant at the time, was phenomenal.
Mm.
It's like I think there was a program about sending nursery children into care homes back in
Yeah, yep,
England,
I saw that. Yeah.
which was phenomenal. And I'm telling you, what I experienced with my mum was unbelievable around that also. And it was literally her instinct to be a mother and care came through. So like she would have nursed the child in her arms and like talked away to the child and whatever. And the child literally, it was as if the child was mesmerized. And this is from a few weeks old. And she had that connection with that child. And it was just so special to see that when the children come into the room, she would just light up. It was just a whole different level of connection. It was just so pure. And with my dad now, the youngest now, the connection he has with the two youngest is phenomenal. It's
Mm.
just like my girl, and my dad would say, we're best friends. And he would even say, I'm her best friend, like about my 2-3 year old niece, which is just the most humbling thing to see also, because to me, that's what life is about. It's the purity, it's the simpleness, it's not all the things that we fill it with.
Well, the mind is taken back to very young in themselves, isn't it? They're really relating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The primal side.
Yeah.
So there's so much connection. And I guess that's what I touched on earlier, the ability to not be able to process more than one thing at a time. So that is a gift, to be able to spend uninterrupted time with the person, to be able to spend that time with my mum, to be able to spend that time with my dad, and just, yeah, there's loads of things that need doing in the house, or, ironing, hoovering, whatever it is, but just to sit in that moment with them, to share an experience with them, is just, that's priceless, totally
Yeah.
priceless for me. So I guess getting back to dementia, there's a lot of downsides to dementia, and I can only speak to it from the observer perspective. I can't tell you what it's like for the person that has it, my mum. And my mum was so well cared for and looked after, and was able to have her favorite things to eat right up until, like, she loved crunchy nut cornflakes. So obviously you had to soak them a lot more, but like her routines still stayed in place. So it takes so much away from you, but she was still able to, through the help of all the caregivers, was still able to be herself in all of it. Um, and also, as I said, then my mum died last year on her birthday, and she
Mm.
hadn't been ill. I think the two sisters that are closest to her noticed a slight change in her the night before, and then that morning was a Monday morning, and I can remember phoning first thing that morning really early, and listening to, and FaceTiming and hearing her breath, and thinking, no, this is not right. I mean, before that, the weight fluctuates, the weight goes up, the weight goes down, and that's kind of how so my mum got really frail, just before she died, really, really frail. And the breathing, so it was actually a bank holiday, and we had to try and get an out of hours. GP. And that was at 7:30 in the morning. The GP came at, I think, about 10 in the morning, by the time we got in touch and whatever else. And when they came, my sister was the only one in the house and my dad was up in the living room. And the doctor came, and it wasn't her normal doctor, but had a look at my mum and everything else. And I think maybe said to my sister, it doesn't look great. And then my sister said, look, can I just contact my sister that I've just been speaking to on the phone? So she contacted me, or phoned me, and the doctor gave us the diagnostics. So I was in Spain, but I was literally still there in the room through technology, thankfully. And he just said, I think that your mum is dying, and I think she's got 1 to 2 days left. So that was obviously a shock. And they wanted to put a driver in, so that they could administer any pain relief or whatever else and have it as pain free as possible. But she wasn't in any pain at all.
No.
So all the fears that we had around how she could die, and I know that we were fortunate. She died at shortly after 5 o'clock that evening. She didn't even have time to have the driver put in, and she was surrounded by all of her family. All my siblings were there, and my mum had a great faith, and she loved praying, and she was surrounded by prayer and the people that she loved. And just before she died, I got a moment on my own with her in the room on FaceTime, apart from my sister. And I said my goodbyes, and I just said that, don't think that you have to wait for me. I'd already booked my flight at that stage. Don't think you have to wait for me. This is really hard for us to say goodbye to you, but you've been the best mother, and just do what you need to do. And so the death was just, from what I had imagined, was the most peaceful death I could ever imagine, which was a great gift. And yes, it is not easy not having my mum around. But I think having the dementia and the loss over a long period of time actually prepared me for the final loss of death through death.
Yeah. Wow, what a story.
Mm.
And hearing you from the beginning to the end, the opportunity for you to go back in your 40s and live with your parents, and it happened while you were there. That's almost fateful, isn't it? That's okay. I'm here. I've got my time with her, and you maximise that experience for her and for you, and a support for Dad, and with the blessing of online and Zoom and
I know.
FaceTime, to be able to be with her, even though you weren't physically there. So many people miss that.
Yeah.
And how are you? How have you been since her passing?
It's like some days are, most of the time I feel absolutely fine. And I guess one of the things that I take a lot of strength from is the enormous support that I've got from people that I don't even know, sending me a message of, I'm thinking about you and I'm just checking in, and it's phenomenal. It was the first person that was really close to me that died. So that was just, the strength that I've taken from that was phenomenal. And I guess the strength that I take now, I think to myself, how I get through this now is everything I am now, the backbone of it came from my mum and my dad. And my mum was a very, very silently strong person. She had a lot of things to contend with in her life. She brought up a large family. Just the times changed significantly from when she was born to when she died 87 years later. But I take great strength in knowing that I know I have the resources, because she showed me how to survive. So, and I allow myself, if I'm not feeling okay, that I take time out. And the first few times of going back to Ireland was, the first of everything, as everybody usually says that has lost somebody, says that's hard the first time that you do different things. And the first few times going back to Ireland was hard because I've always been used to going back and she's there. Now you're going back and there's a grave there. But she's everywhere. I don't think that she's just one place. She's in all the things that she created through me and through every one of my siblings and through all her grandchildren and everything else.
Do you
The
feel
time that I
do you feel closer to her in death than because of that connection of her around you?
I feel just as close to her, I think, in death,
Mm.
as what I did when she was alive. And the hardest time for me has been my birthday, surprisingly enough, because it was the first time in my life since I was, well, I'm 51 now. I still have to think about what age I am. It was the first time in my life that I had a birthday without my mum being there.
Mm.
And I hadn't even thought of that. So it's some things that actually come in that I've never thought about. I don't have my own children, which is probably a complete other podcast. But not having my own children, that affected me when my mum died also, because it was like, okay, well, my mum's dead, my dad's dead. I'm the last of this particular bloodline because I don't have any family. So things affect you different times. I mean, it's all to do with the individual.
Mm.
But I have great, I have a lot of resources that she's left me with.
So you have moments when it's you're prepared and you're going through your first year, and as you said, Mum's birthday was the same day that she died, so you've got,
Yes.
you know, it's tinged, but
Bigger. Yeah.
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 And then there's other
Yeah.
anniversaries that come up that
Mhm.
you're waiting for, but also some that you don't expect.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And just before I forget it, if anybody is listening to this that does know somebody that has dementia or think they may have dementia, there is so much support out there, but you don't necessarily know what it is. So just keep asking questions. There's so many different supports. And for us, having an amazing social worker, OT, was just phenomenal for us. So there is, and other people. Speak to other people. They're never going to be through the same as what you've been through, but actually they can maybe direct you, signpost you to supports that's maybe available. And just sometimes it's just good to get things off your chest, or if if you're angry or whatever, we're all human.
Yeah.
And we all feel guilt at times for different things. We may feel guilty for being angry when we have to look after somebody that's sick or whatever, but we're human. We have our needs also, and that's okay.
Mm.
So just to let people know that whatever way you're dealing with something is okay, because it's your life and it's the way you're dealing with it.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of support out there, a lot of support.
And the way that you dealt with it, you have a big family and you all pulled together and you were able to be with her a lot. And I imagine there are some people out there that are doing everything they can to just hold themselves together so that
Yeah,
they can be there for someone else. And it's knowing that
gosh.
you can have that support too. This is what we're here for as
Yeah,
therapists, is to give you that space to be able to have somewhere to take those frustrations and those feelings and the double grief that you have to go through, uh, and to be able to process the loss afterwards. We are there for
absolutely.
you as well.
Absolutely, Deb. And I think as well, especially for people that are caregivers, um, they so much of their life is consumed by giving care. And I guess you could say this about parents as well. We know we call it empty nesters, but when the children leave home is quite a traumatic time for parents,
Mhm.
because they fed everything into looking after these little people, and then suddenly, what do I do with myself? Who am I? And that happens to people in all different types of situations, but also with carers. They have put everything into caring for this person, and then this person dies,
Mm.
and the people, they're lost. They don't know who
Yeah.
they are. They don't know. It's very, very scary. And I would say there's somebody that you can talk to. Obviously both of us as therapists, but there is so many different people, and they're there. There's people that do want to listen to you and do want to support you.
Yeah. Well, when you have such a close relationship with one of your parents and that parent passes, that the parent has filled the hole and then they take the hole with them. The hole opens back up, and
Yeah,
that's enough. This then becomes, although that's really hard to see at the time, it becomes an opportunity to find yourself in
it
time.
does. Absolutely. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, as human beings, we use every coping mechanism possible to not face ourselves at times, because there's parts of ourselves that we don't like, and that's everybody. So yeah, when you're ready, when everybody's ready, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Anne. That was a really honest story, and it sounds like you were able and blessed to be able to give Mum everything she needed, that you had time to process that, and it sounds like her passing has left you with no regrets.
Absolutely. Absolutely no regrets.
Which has helped your grieving process. But thanks for sharing it. I hadn't heard that story in its entirety, so.
Oh, well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to share it.
Yeah.
And
There are a lot of you.
Mother.
Yes, we send our blessings to her. She's been with us in the podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And thank you for all your advice, giving to listeners out there. So, if anybody wants to get in touch with myself or Anne, how can people get in touch with if they want to work with you?
Yeah, well, if people do want to work with me, or even if they don't want to work with me and they want to chat, because that's what I would always say. If I can't support you the best possible way or give you the support that you need, I'll do everything I can to find you the support that you need. So I have 2 telephone numbers. Now I'm on the spot. I'm trying to remember them. My telephone number for the UK is 07827 20 60 40. Or maybe you can put it up somewhere. I'm not sure if that is it or not.
If I could just stop you there. Do you have a website?
No, I don't have a website. It's just telephone numbers.
Okay. Sorry. Right. I want you to go back and repeat that bit. Just give one number out, and I can just delete that bit.
Okay, so if people do want to get in touch with me, I have 2 numbers. I have a UK number and a Spanish number. And my UK number is 07827 60 20 40. That's 07827 60 20 40. And for anybody that's in Spain, my number is 686 333 259. That's 686 333 259. And just send me a WhatsApp is probably the best way to get me.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, from that, it gleams that we have probably another couple of podcasts to be able to do.
Sounds like it, Deb.
So I will have the delights of Anne coming back again. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
See you later.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.